Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to my weekly update of what's happening in Washington. And boy, it's been a busy week. Let me get right at it. For most of you know, I have been concerned about Chinese competition in technology on a variety of fronts. It was, frankly, our efforts on the Intelligence Committee a number of years back that pointed out the national security problems with Huawei, the Chinese telecom provider. More recently, we've looked at issues with a Chinese kind of genetic engineering firm, BGI. But an area that I've been particularly focused on is China's ability on having very successful large tech companies and potential for these tech companies to collect American data. And in the case of TikTok, which 170 million Americans use and on average use about 90 minutes a day, TikTok, which is owned by ByteDance, Chinese company, Chinese law requires as of 2017 that all data, all information, that frankly the company itself, its first responsibility is loyalty to the Communist Party of China. Not loyalty to its shareholders, not loyalty to its customers. And, over a year ago, I was involved in trying to put together a bipartisan approach that would not just focus on TikTok per se, but focus on technology companies from China, Russia, North Korea, and Iran that pose national security risks. We were making great progress, but then TikTok dropped $100 million in advertising and lobbying. We got attacked from both the left and the right, and that effort stalled out. That's why I was so happy to see this week the House, in an overwhelming number, 352 votes, vote in favor of a process that would not ban TikTok, but would say it and other social media companies controlled by China, but particularly TikTok, would have to be divested, or you could end up in terms of removing the application. Let me say at the outset, there's a lot of creativity on TikTok. And there's a lot of people who are social influencers who make their money off of that. I think that's all great. And I think that creativity and that platform should be able to continue. It should just not be ultimately controlled by an adversary like the Chinese Communist Party. Again, as I said, 170 million Americans, 90 minutes a day. The amount of data that they are collecting that resides back ultimately in Beijing is overwhelming. And the ability and the magic of TikTok is that it kind of knows what you like before you know what you like. The ability for that algorithm that spits out what video you see next could be used as a tremendous propaganda tool for the CCP. We're in an election year in America. You could end up seeing messages that might say, well, Taiwan is actually part of China, or Putin has a right to Ukraine. And when particularly young people in huge numbers look to get all their news from TikTok, that is an enormous national security threat. So this overwhelming bipartisan vote in the House is, I think, good news. Senator Rubio and I, my ranking member on the Intelligence Committee, we've said we want to support that legislation and get a hearing in the Senate. There may need to be certain changes made, but I think having this debate on the floor of the Senate, making sure people realize what's at stake, that we're not trying to eliminate something that a lot of people like, but we're just trying to make sure that ultimately that control is not held by the Communist Party of China. And we've already seen indications today, actually, that former Trump Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin, who I worked well with, who was very active in the efforts to, under President Trump, to try to take down TikTok. He is putting together an investor group that would try to purchase this. So whether it was his group or some other group or some combination of American efforts, European efforts, I just think we need a solution. And I'd point out, this is not just a problem that has been voiced in America. Other nations, Canada, Great Britain, the European Union, Australia, New Zealand, have all taken TikTok off all of their government phones because of a national security risk. Journalism companies like the British Broadcasting Corporation have said, to journalists, don't use TikTok because the Chinese can use this to monitor you as a journalist and frankly, collect damaging information. So I think it's time for us to have a debate. I know that Congress's track record on putting any ground rules or any barriers on social media or artificial intelligence has been pretty poor. But I do think the overwhelming vote in the House, the national security implications mean that we should. I hope the Senate will take up this legislation, amend it if necessary, but get it to the president's desk as soon as possible. And the president has indicated he will sign that